All right, welcome everybody to this evening's event.
Hi, Holly. There was I was a bit ambiguous when we were actually starting, but maybe we have.
Yeah,
Hi.
I think we're good to go now.
Yeah. So my name is Megan Eustace, and I lecture the drawing and the life drawing at MTU CCAD. Like many tutors, I juggle two professions. So I not only lecture, but I also have a studio practice and would exhibit widely. My primary medium is drawing. And so I think and I present through drawing, and I'd most regularly work with a life model in the studio. Would you like to introduce yourself, Holly?
Yeah, I'll go for it. Thanks, Megan. So my name is Holly Walsh. I'm a visual artist as well as a drawing lecturer at the Crawford College of Art and Design. And I graduated from the Crawford in 2016 and have gone on to start my own studio practice. I work a lot from the landscape, so I like wild and wonderful places and draw inspiration from the landscape. And I have done numerous residencies around the world, which I'm very lucky to. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Myself and Megan are looking forward to kind of trying to give you a little bit of a look into the world of life drawing and perhaps some of the things that drawing can help bring into your everyday life. So thanks to MTU and the Crawford College of Art and Design for this Succeeding Together series. I'm really glad that this is kind of the penultimate episode. So, thanks for joining in, everyone.
Yeah.
And while I think, sorry, if you have any questions that you would like to have answered or some queries, perhaps they pop up as we're talking about different topics this evening. If you want to just type them into your Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, we'll have a few minutes at the end of this session to try and answer a few of those. Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, so over the next hour, we are going to just talk a bit about the life drawing and give a few insights and do a couple of drawing exercises, which we would encourage you, whatever your experience, to join in with. And Philip is on the tech. Thank you very much, Philip. So I am often asked, why did I get interested in life drawing? And I have to thank Sean Keating and my grandmother. He taught my grandmother life drawing, and in a former times when I was tour guiding at the Crawford Art Gallery, every time I came to the painting Men of the South by Sean Keating, my grandmother's advice about hands would always rattle in my head. You must be able to draw hands accurately, she would say, and I know that came from him. I'm just going to share the screen now, and there's just a few slides I'm going to show, so just bear with me a second, and I need to just open that. Oops. Just bear with me again, please. Share screen. And yep. Whoops. Okay, sorry guys. I'm not sure that my share screening is happening here at the moment. I'm just gonna give it one more go. Thank you. Thank you. And here we go. Are we good? Yep. Just bear with me. Thank you. Whoa. Yeah, very good. Are we good? Are we sharing screen?
I'm not seeing anything, Meg.
Oh, Philip. What's going on? Okay. We won't worry about that then. We'll just keep moving on. Okay. There's no problem. All right. We call drawing the intelligence of seeing, because not only do we perceive with our eyes, but it's with all our senses. And we also utilize our memory and imagination. So it's quite a complex process to draw that we engage in. In the 21st century, it is understood when we make a mark, we can put feeling and emotion into the line. And so our observation, even if it's analytic observation, can be informed about the experience that we're having at that moment we are drawing. I'm always interested in robotics and neuroscience, and I'm always interested because they keep trying to find a robot and then match it with AI and trying to make it draw. But if you think about it, when we actually draw, if you're utilizing memory and that memory starts from inside your womb, there's this whole chasm of, well, a robot and AI can maybe be a drawing machine. But the act of being human and drawing, it's a whole experiential experience that we now exploit or express or utilize in the 21st century. Back in the old days, life drawing was the core of art education in Europe. And if you think about it, we needed to tell cultural stories about ourselves. So being able to draw humans was necessary. The fact that in European culture, unlike Japanese or in China or Persian drawing, there was a propensity for wanting to make the figure very exact and very perfect. Let's use that word. That stems from philosophical ideas that were going around at the time, just as much as the drawing education and how and why we draw now is influenced by our societal values. Back in the 1700s, it was all about enlightenment and rationalism and mathematics and science. And it was all about rote learning, therefore. So you would learn how to draw like this, and everybody would do it together, and you all had to understand it there, and then you'd move on to the next bit, etc. So when we realize that, oh, so the way we draw and why we draw and how we draw is influenced by social, political, cultural ideas of the time, it helps us, and it helps third level students to contextualize why they are in the life room and what their education is, which I'll expand on in a little bit. I'm just going to my other notes. Yeah. Okay. So interestingly, the elephant in the room as regards life drawing is the fact that we're working from unclothed figures. And so students have a chance to contextualize their drawing from the nude. And if they ask, well, could you do that? And why wouldn't you? And it gives us an opportunity to actually think culturally, how do we regard the nude in our culture? And obviously this is an evolving situation. Our society now is flooded with images of the nude, let's just say that, unclothedness. The human body is being dematerialized into the digital in so many ways. Being able to spend time and look at another human for hours on end, whether they have clothes on or not, is almost radical in our digital on-screen lives that we now have to now experience. How we process static 2D imagery, I'm just putting this in there, photographs, screenshots, or online moving images is different. It's not the same as how I process and draw from real life. Life drawing is about something being life-size, another human being life-size, and being live. So we're perceiving not just, oh, I've got to draw this. When we're drawing, it is allowing us to, again, experience all the information coming into our senses, of which there are 5, but there are at least about 17, and they don't have names for some of them. So here's the thing. When I actually draw, it's not just seeing a figure seated on a stool on the stage. I have to learn how to see that figure. And there's a big thing about, in order to learn to see, you need to learn to draw. And in order to learn to draw, you need to be able to learn to see. And that is a paradox. And what is happening is that we are actually refining how we see. Remember, our visual sighting system, which is made up of 30% of our eyes, and it's 70% of what we're looking at is processed by this big computer under our skulls. And our brains, you see, that processor is always in the mode of recognition and filtering. And the huge volume of visual information we're taking in, it's coming into a system, has to be filtered and shortcutted. I just made that up, but anyway, it has to, be made smaller, whatever the word is. So learning to see is in fact a way of reprogramming what we do and don't want our brains to take notice of. And what we're actually asking our brains to do is to take notice of a lot more detail than it has to. The figure is considered the hardest subject to draw because it's the most familiar subject to us. And because it's so familiar, the brain actually shortcuts how it looks at the human body. It doesn't see this, it just ignores this. These things haven't got a function, so it ignores them. So very often when you draw a face, it's got massive eyes, a massive mouth, massive nose, but this is all ignored and this is all ignored. From children onwards, we will do that. So learning to see is about developing how we actually do see, literally. Third level drawing is taught now within the societal values that we inhabit, and those values this century, apart from having obviously been impacted by technological revolution in communication, but the boundaries and the hierarchies back in the 1700s at all the art schools across Europe, there were no women. It was, you know, the whole, even the genders acceptance, you know, has all changed from 150 years ago, 100 years ago. The hierarchies of you can't do this and you can do that. Drawing must look like this and it mustn't look like that, gone. All those boundaries and those hierarchies are shifting, they're overlapping and they're being reinvented. Drawing is no longer stuck to the wall on a 2D piece of paper. It now takes up a 3-dimensional space. It can be moving image. It can be performance-based. It can be collaborative. I don't need to draw at all. I could just instruct someone else to do the drawing. And what's also interesting this century is drawing research has mushroomed across the globe. And we're really proud and delighted that one of those research hubs has now started here at MTU in the Crawford College of Art and Design. It was founded by Dr. Lucy Day-Lawn and also by Dr. Helen Farrell, and it's called Drawbridge. So research is available now for students during college, postgrad studies. The benefits of drawing practice for fine art students is well documented. And if fine art students come to the Life Room, it's not only that they're learning analytic skills, but they're also learning what we call embodied skills. And the embodied skills are the skills that we can use to communicate our emotion, our feelings, our experience of being alive, of being human. Interestingly, America's particularly good at this. Across universities in America, there's always modules, drawing modules. There has been since the end of the last century, modules for non-arts students. So whether you're studying science, maths, physical education, everything, there's always an opportunity because they understand, and all the neuroscience that's been done with drawing involved affirms that it's really beneficial and it's valuable as soon as you pick up a pencil and start doing something with it. Because when we draw, we activate parts of our brain that really that stimulate our spontaneity, our risk-taking, our originality, our inventiveness, and they keep your brain flexible and you're problem solving all the time. Think of it, you've just been faced with a piece of white paper, what do you do next? But that's just a part of it. How do you get that figure over there in the 3D world onto your 2D surface, you know? So it develops problem solving. These are transferable skills that, so my students, it doesn't matter if they are photographers, performance artists, or mathematicians actually, or, you know, scientists in that way, or performance artists. Drawing knowledge is transferable knowledge, and that's makes it really accessible, not only at that third level education, but also right down at beginners, toddlers, every level. So drawing is a form of communication, perceptual communication. And when we bear that in mind, it frees us up to think, yeah, my doodling is a form of communication. And I think there's no slides there, Holly, to say that was over.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all good.
We winged it there, guys. Thank you very much. And yeah, I was just saying there, Holly, I touched a bit about the cultural perceptions and how drawing education and drawing styles reflect the societal values of the time. And you have an interesting and unique take, not only on teaching life drawing, but you were and have been a life model for a few years too. And I thought it might be nice if you just told us a bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for that, Megan. So, as she mentioned, I suppose a bit of background. As an art student, I think I was 19 at the time. I figured, do you know what? I am in the life drawing room on a full Friday afternoon. I'm drawing the models. I'm really enjoying this. Can I make a bit of bob on the side where how come I can't be on the stage as well? So while I'm that poor starving art student, how about I sit on the stage for it, perhaps in the evening classes? So I chanced it, and I think, like many chancings of jobs when you're trying a new career, and not quite a career, but for myself, but certainly an undertaking. Um, I realized very suddenly that there was a lot more effort went into it than I first thought. Certainly, I always like to think of myself when I was the drawer at my easel, looking at whatever model we had posing for the day. I always thought I was courteous. I always thought, I was treating this person with respect. I understood that, there was a bit of effort going into staying perfectly still for us. You might think a little bit, gosh, how do they get over the nudity? Are they not very shy? So I had these kind of questions. I was very aware I was not the perfect body type that I would be seeing in magazines and TV adverts and on my phone, Instagram, all that kind of thing. Um, but I decided just to go for it. And what I learned from being a model was how warped our own perceptions of ourselves can be. We've been talking a little bit about perception and how we see the world and how our brain sometimes filters in all that kind of static, all those information and has to limit it down. And unfortunately, sometimes those things get mistranslated. So while I might have had friends and all that who say, no, go for it, you don't need to worry about it, in my mind, I was saying I am overweight, I don't have a straight nose, I'm not a dancer, all these different things that I had presumed a model should be. And it wasn't until I started experiencing sitting perfectly still for 2 hours. For one thing, it takes a lot more energy than you think. You keep all your muscles tense. You try to keep your focus on one specific area. You're breathing relaxed. But it wasn't until the end where, after about 2 hours, usually all the artists will turn their boards around to face the center of the room so we all have a look. And it was almost a reveal. In some ways, it felt more revealing looking at those 14 separate drawings than when I had to unrobe for everyone. And what struck me was, while I had been sitting there for the first 2 hours, all I could focus on were these flaws that I was perceiving. When I'm seated, I have rolls on my stomach. God, who could stand drawing that? Because realistically, a lot of the images we have to see in our day-to-day life, as I said, those adverts and stuff, we don't see that. It is edited out for us. But when I started looking at all these 14 different people's perceptions of myself, I suddenly realized, the things that I get caught up on, they're not even noticed by others. Sometimes they're celebrated, if anything. And then likewise, when I started back up on the actual act of drawing, okay, so I was modeling in the evenings and then I was drawing during the daytime, I realized I started to become a lot more connected to what was actually happening in the room. As Megan has been mentioning, it's a strange thing in a way to be vulnerable and to be present with people you're not necessarily best friends with. This is in a professional kind of standpoint, but we're all striving towards some kind of connection, and realizing that there is a living, breathing human right in front of you. They have their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own energies. Trying to pick up a little bit of that without getting super hippy dippy. I wasn't drawing auras. I wasn't trying to do anything like that. But just by when I was making those drawings, as much as trying to get the perfect measurements and the proportions, I was also kind of marveling at, right now I'm the only person with this specific viewpoint in the world. This model is holding this pose for me and I can experience that this is never going to happen again. I could snap a photo of it, but it won't be the same. It won't capture that liveliness. And I think that's what's so fascinating about drawing. We've been talking a lot about the you know, the theoretical aspects, how it does help us look at the world in fresh ways or channel those or challenge those preconceived notions. But it's also bringing a physicality to things. I certainly have been missing just making a mess, you know, having a studio, making a mark. When you think about it, as you know, we get told off for making a mess as kids, okay? You're taught to draw within the box, don't get colors everywhere. But there's something really beautiful about giving yourself that permission. Make a mess, be curious, make mistakes. For me, drawing and life drawing certainly um, helps you embrace that spontaneity and not focus quite so much on the finished drawing that has to be hung on the wall and there are critiques or anything like that, but instead just allow myself to try and tap into the moment, the here and now. You know that, you know, mindfulness is thrown around a lot, and certainly there are tons of ways different people can become more mindful or more present in their day-to-day life. And for me, certainly drawing is that invitation to cut out a bit of time for yourself. Take, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, just give yourself permission to be curious about something around you, whether it's that person who's sitting for you, your dog falling asleep curled up by the fire, you know, your favorite mug as you're waiting for the kettle to boil. Even if you don't have a pen or pencil in hand, just be curious and try and see, you know, is the light beautiful or are there interesting shapes? So I think I'm going over time. I tend to ramble. So with all that kind of drawing talk in mind, I think it would be nice for all of us to kind of pick up a pen or a pencil if you're down for it. So what we're going to be doing is Megan is going to be helping us become more sensitive to the lines that we draw. So whatever piece of paper you have on hand, whether it's the back of a copybook, some printer paper, something like that, a pen or a pencil on hand. And just to kind of be aware, we are not going to focus too much on, you know, very corrective measures. Instead, I just really want to embrace that human side with the drawing. So with that, Megan, if you're happy to go for it, thank you.
I'm also often asked of how do you teach life drawing? How do you start that? Because I say I teach beginners, all levels, you know, and it's a bit of a mystery of, well, how do you do that? And what we're going to do next is how I do that. This is how we start. And if there are any ex-students out there, hi everybody. And you're all very familiar with this, and I'm giving you the opportunity to do it. So whatever level of experience, being able to draw a line is always good practice for me. Doesn't matter how many hundreds or thousands of times I've done it. And this is how we begin. So if you have a pencil, try and make sure it's sharp and look at the HB, you know, preferably not HB, maybe it's got a 4B or 5B, or just use a biro. And I'd say maybe a biro as opposed to marker because of what we're going to do. Okay, so literally get your piece of paper in front of you, and I'm just going to tip my screen so you can see it a bit. So here's a paper. Okay, now I want you to shut your eyes, okay? And I know I'm tipping my screen because some of you might not maybe just wanting to watch. Okay. So for those of us that are going to draw a line, let's shut our eyes. Okay. So with your non-dominant hand, so I'm right-handed. So with my non-dominant hand, I want you to just feel the surface in front of you and just keep your eyes shut and just feel the edges of the paper. Just feel where the edges are, feel the paper, the surface, and try and work out where you think the middle might be. Give yourself a sense of where you think the middle might be, okay? And then I want you to make contact with your hand that's got the medium in it. And I want you to press really hard on the surface. You can hold on to the paper so it doesn't move around with your non-dominant hand, your empty hand. And I want you to just start to really press hard and make a small line going to your right. And just feel how heavy it is. Make it very slowly. Feel how heavy it is. And maybe move the biro or the pencil in your hand so you can sort of be aware you're getting the thickest edge of it. And this is quite slow. And now I want you to hold the paper with your hand, but then in a very gentle way, really lightly, let the pencil go to the other side of the page and feel how light it is, or your biro. And doesn't matter if it goes off. And then when it's coming back, I want to now make it go very heavy and then very light, and very heavy and very light. I want you to feel what it feels like when you're pressing very hard and pressing very lightly, and see if you can get that rhythm going. Whenever you think about it, press hard and press lightly. And now, can you just let the line start to make a big circle? Just let it go round in a circle. And again, I want you to make a medium pressure and try and think about making a medium line, whatever that means to you. And then I want you to get very light again and start to speed it up. Just feel the speed. See how fast you can go. And really, really, really fast, really fast. Feel the speed. Drawing is all about timing. And then slow it down. It's about timing. How fast and how slow is my pencil moving? Just let the biro or your pencil go anywhere on the page now. And just find a rhythm that feels suitable for you. I'm kind of going at a medium speed. And then when you're back at the middle, then just stop, okay? And we'll just open our eyes again. And when you look at your drawing, and it's always important to look at what you've done. Don't always try and ignore those words. Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't like that. Those aren't helpful and aren't really relevant. We would never talk about drawing as a bad drawing or a good drawing. So notice, hopefully there's maybe thicker lines and some thinner lines and some heavier lines and some gentle lines. That sense of putting the pressure on and pressure off and making a thick line and a thin line. This is the very beginning of drawing, of realizing that you are in command of the pressure and the type of line that is going to be made. And that is whether you have a spray can in your hand, a big house brush full of emulsion paint in your hand, or a pencil. You're the boss of that line. Okay, so, and by doing what I just did, I'm allowing your body and yourself, and I shut your eyes so that you didn't start to try and control it and say that's a big circle, a bad circle, a good circle, listen to my language. I just shut your eyes so you couldn't control it, so you could feel your way through it. So there we go. Holly, I've warmed us all up, and I'm going to hand back to Holly now, and she's going to explain a development of that exercise.
Great, thanks Megan.
Okay.
So now that we've kind of sensitized ourselves a little bit, trying to work on that hand coordination. Okay, I was going to say hand-eye coordination, but since we're closing those eyes, and that kind of segues on for a really interesting exercise in my mind. Oftentimes when, we've been talking about how do you get better at drawing, and certainly observational drawing. We've been throwing out these kind of words like perception and how we have to grapple. We're trying to train ourselves to see better, but how do you interrupt a process that has been happening all your life? All those kind of preconceived notions that we have, okay? And for me, a really pivotal exercise in this is called blind contour drawing. So I have a short video demo that we're going to have a look at in a minute. But before we start, I just wanted to say, This can seem very new to you if you haven't done this before, and certainly our egos will take a hit sometimes. It happened to me the first few times I did it. We will want to peak, we will want to make corrections. But essentially, why we're not looking at that page, much like Megan was saying, we're trying to build up a bit of sensitivity, okay? So this time around, when we're blind drawing, we're not going to be having our eyes closed, but we are going to be not looking at the page on either hand, okay? We're going to be looking at a subject matter. So perhaps while this video is playing, I would suggest you have a look around, think to yourself, what do I have on hand? Perhaps it's an old gnarly boot with lots of different contours. Perhaps it's kind of an extravagant house plant. I would suggest finding an item that has something interesting. We don't want just a very simple bottle like this, because what we're going to be trying to do is, without looking at the page, only looking at the object, we're going to be trying to train our eye to really look at the different shapes that are happening instead of those kind of impressions or those shorthand versions that we so often use. So I'm going to just start that screen share, Philip, if you're happy to, the blind drawing video. So now I'm going to do a demo of blind contour drawing. And essentially, when we're blind drawing, we are not looking at the easel or the page that we're drawing on, and instead only focusing on the subject matter that is in front of us. If we just were to think about it, the easiest way to visualize syncing up your hand and your eye coordination is to picture your eye having a red laser pointer, so that when you focus on a subject matter, the point of focus of your eye, let's say it's looking at this far left cheekbone here of the skull, as that red laser dot travels up, along, and around the contours, ideally your charcoal on the page is mimicking that path. So, as I said, I will start off with any given point. To begin with, I often think it is best to pick a point somewhere on the top half of the skull, working around in a 360 fashion, just so that you describe the exterior contours as opposed to the interior detail. This will just train your eye and get used to this hand-eye coordination and not looking at the page quite so much. Please bear in mind, especially when you start this, it will be a bit shaky, it's a lot to handle, but try to embrace the act of looking as opposed to focusing on the act of drawing. Remember as well, when you start, to keep pace. If your eye is jumping ahead to future details and your hand is playing catch-up, slow down. Likewise, if your hand is drawing details that your eye isn't actively focusing on, take a deep breath and restart, okay? So, ideally, this is a lot about looking and fine looking, instead of focusing on these preconceived notions of what a skull looks like from cartoons, magazines, movies, all this subconscious information in our heads that affect what happens on this page, whether we are aware of it or not. We're banishing that by not allowing ourselves to control that, and instead really focusing on what's in front of us. We don't have control of what's happening on the page per se. So really just embrace noticing all the fine details. When you're drawing the arc of, let's say, the skull, the forehead, the cranium, don't just do one simple stroke like that. Instead, it is much more beneficial to start drawing really slowly, noticing all those different subtle changes, okay? So, I'm going to start. And it is also worth noting when you're at home, Sometimes, especially when you're first starting out, it is very tempting to stare at the page. So sometimes, depending on your ability, you can draw so that you don't even have an option of staring at the page. You're right in front of it, whether it's under a table, to your side, behind your back, if you're being very adventurous. So I'm going to start out with this eye here, this eye socket. And I'm tracing with my hand the journey my eye is taking. Slowing down when I reach points of interest. So, taking a closer look at this drawing, immediately my response is to freak out. I don't have a perfect dome, things are squashed up, overlapped one another. But when we take a closer look from my viewpoint and the page, try and play spot the difference, or in this case, spot the commonalities. And be kind to yourself, especially when you're only starting out. But trying to pick out areas that you do recognize and realize there's a certain amount of freedom and kind of interest that you can find when there are commonalities. So I'm having a look here. And although, of course, the teeth are kind of jumbled, looking at it, there's quite a lot of commonalities going on here. The shape of the eye socket to the left, looking at it from here and my viewpoint, there is a certain amount of congruencies. So with that, guys, hopefully that made a little bit of sense. And I suppose what I'd like to preface this with is, okay, definitely starting off, you are not going to be having, generally speaking, images that you fall madly in love with. It takes a little bit of training, I think. But the reality is you will start looking way more intently at your subject matters. Even going back to when I used to be a model, it would surprise me how some people wouldn't even look in my direction for about 40 minutes. I'm there staying perfectly still, and they're so engrossed in what's happening on the easel. They're drawing this kind of woman from their imagination as much as what was sitting in front of them. So that's what I kind of think is really great to embrace with this. Really is helping you, for one thing, look more in detail, but also training that hand-eye coordination. Much like when you're learning to play the piano, you learn to play the scales to an extent that you're no longer having to look down and find where is A, where is B. Instead, you're allowing your hands to do a little bit of the heavy lifting. So if you perhaps have an object that you might have thought of that would be interesting to draw, certainly for beginners, if you've never done this before, I would stick to just the outer contours of whatever object you choose, working in that kind of clockwise fashion. Again, really trying not to stare at the page if possible. And certainly for those of us a bit more experienced, I think, try and just map out wherever on the page your eye travels around. So what we're going to do, guys, is for the next, I'd say, 4 minutes, I think. We're running a tiny bit late, so we'll keep this nice and brief. But I think, Megan, if you're happy to join along and draw in or talk about this, I would say, everyone, pick up your pen or pencil, place your object in a nice kind of spot that you can have a decent look at it. And as I said, try your best not to look at the page. Certainly if you're sitting at a desk, sometimes it is good to put the sketchbook underneath the desk, it kind of disregards that temptation to look, but I'll leave that to you guys.
Yeah. So the object here, I don't know how much time I'm going to get to draw this, but the object is, when you're doing this type of drawing, is not to make a representational perfect copy of the thing you're looking at. The object is, as Holly has been saying, is about being able to feel your way through that. And that's what you're developing, your hand-eye coordination. You're not developing, oh my God, that looks an amazing skull. I just looks like it's so perfect, or that's so perfect, the dog toy. Okay. So it's not about that. So I'm just gonna be drawing blind from my dog toy as well. And okay, you're on the
Would
time.
3 or 4 minutes be good for you, Megan? I'll give you a shout.
For everybody just get a little taste of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. I'll keep track of time and give you a shout. Thanks, Meg.
Yes. Okay.
And again, for the participants at home, really just slowing down and trying to get those sensitive lines. So even if it's a curved object, really follow each and every curve sensitively. See if there's differences. And even playing around with the pressure that you use on the page, much like that warm-up exercise we did. Perhaps areas of interest or areas of darkness, you press down hard and really feel that paper and that tension. Maybe for areas that are in light or are fluffy or barely there, you do a very light mark on the page. But really just trying to experience looking at whatever object you chose without stressing about people looking at your drawing afterwards and comparing it or anything like that. But instead just to find that curiosity. You're charting some uncharted lands here, you're mapping it out.
I think some of the hardest thing about this exercise, especially for those not familiar with it, is going slowly, isn't it, Holly?
Yeah, definitely.
Slow down, because students don't believe me when I say slow down, and then go even slower and slower and slower. And yeah.
Oh, even the video, I realized my blind drawing. I was like, I was doing that way quicker because I was nervous having to record myself on video. So
Yeah.
it definitely goes to show we can all fall into that.
Yeah.
So I'd say we'll do another minute or so with the 60 seconds, everyone, for those of you drawing along or those of you who are just enjoying watching Megan draw these lovely lines. Just another minute or so.
Okay.
That's lovely. Thanks, Megan. I'd say that's about
We
time up if you're happy to. But certainly for anyone who is intrigued by this, you know, give yourself permission, even if it's 10 minutes every now and again, just to have that visual curiosity. Take your pencil for a walk.
Absolutely. You could be just sitting at your desk, just doodling, got a pencil or biro in your hand, and just look at anything. I'd say even 30 seconds, wouldn't you, Holly?
Yeah,
Every minute that you spend doing any drawing activity is good brain exercise. Really good.
great.
Okay.
So Philip, we might go
Well,
on to the final short video I have. It's about 6 minutes left, and that way, hopefully, we have a minute or two to do some Q&A. So if anyone else has a question or some advice they want, to be sure to put that in the chat, the Q&A, and we'll try and get to that at the very end. But for now, we'll just play that final video. Thanks, Philip. So this is essentially a video compilation I did where I just wanted to talk a bit more about the kind of wonders and the curiosity that drawing can bring into your life. So in my own experience, I find drawing, on the one hand, it is very conceptual, it is helping us think about things more. But on the other hand, it's a very physical process. We're just looking at myself playing around with some ink on these pages right here and just noticing the wonderful different marks that you can get simply by having the page wet or dry. And likewise, here's another image of myself just being curious. This was a cup my grandmother gave me, some of the fine china. Okay, she would probably be in the horrors that I have it out here on a messy art student desk. But I was just curious. I knew the feel of it. It was this precious thing, but how do I make sense of the shapes of it? And here we have another image. So this was me, again with the ink, this medium that I really love because for me, it combines that messiness and it has a mind of its own sometimes, as you can see how it spreads across a watered surface like that. But it can also be really controlled with practice. So here I am just drawing my favorite mug. And, I think when we think about it, your favorite mug. I think most of us have one. How it feels when it radiates warmth, whether it's tea or coffee it's holding or whether it's cold. How it looks when it's held in your hand, when you're groggy in the morning versus how it looks sitting at the bottom of the sink waiting for someone else to wash it up. So whatever it is, just taking the time to think about it, not just in the physical sense, the colors or the patterns or the exact shape it has. Certainly it can be really valuable to challenge yourself and try and do a bit of that brain training. How do I capture this so that it looks like this real life 3D object on a 2D surface, which is magic in of its own, I think. It's also, drawing gives you that permission to bring sensitivity. You know that mug better than anyone. So the type of marks that you use or how you portray it can really imbue it with feeling. That's why, sometimes that's why art galleries are still a thing. We go for that handmade holistic touch as opposed to it just being computer rendered all the time. So what I would say is, whether you've joined in this evening for some tips about practical academic types of drawings, or whether it's just you're curious about what takes to be a good drawer, if we can call someone a good drawer these days, I would say it's finding out a personal line of inquiry. Be curious around the world around you, whether it is doing these old-fashioned, almost atelier style studies where you're trying to get these voluminous objects like I have a sphere here, or whether it's more experimental. Here I am drawing a lemon, but I wasn't quite so focused on the yellowness of the lemon or anything like that, but the kind of cool, refreshing feeling that you can get from it. By engaging with life drawing in any shape or form, you'll start noticing details of the things around you that you might not otherwise pause to think about. In my own experience, nature has been a really influential part of my practice. When I was 20, I lost someone who was very close to me, and I found the grieving process really difficult. I wasn't finding much solace in anything, to be honest. And it wasn't until I started visiting that person's garden who had passed away and making these kind of delicate drawings, not pictured right here, but for example, I was drawing her garden as it changed throughout the seasons. Every weekend I would go down for about 2 hours. And just in this one square meter of her garden where she had planted bulbs for the following spring that she never got to see, I decided to just pay homage to that and notice all these different details. And it wasn't until a few weeks in when I started to really get into it, week after week, spending these 2 hours, that I started noticing all these wonderful things that were happening right in front of me. I started to connect, nature has its own systems that keep on going even when we think the world is ending. And I think drawing and art in general allows us to try and make sense of these bigger things on hand by, in some ways being practical by trying to create these abstract thoughts into a physical thing, but also to just spark that curiosity that we might otherwise push back.
Thanks, Holly. Great.
Pleasure.
That's perfect. Really lovely. And I concur with everything that you just were saying there. Do you want to just read out the Q&As, Holly, before we might get the plug pulled on us? I don't know. Go on.
So what are you using for the inks in the drawing videos by Kiran Daly? So that is Indian ink that I use, just a general carbon base. I really like the Winsor & Newton black Indian ink. But that said, I think ink is a wonderful thing. I would recommend anyone have some fun with that. Great, thank you. Any other questions, guys? Kelly Pierce, what's a medium you recommend for beginners starting out? Megan, do you want to take this one?
Oh, well, keep it simple. It's pencils or biros, it depends whether you're on your own at home. I mean, and it's when you set up an obstacle, I can't do that because I haven't got that. Drawing can always find a way around that. You can find something in the kitchen. We were having to make students look at what was in the kitchen to use for drawing medium in the last whatever months. But charcoal, if you can get into charcoal, Bioblock, I never used to like it. I didn't understand it. But as soon as I got it and started using it in my hands, etc., I really, it was an amazing medium. So I would say get some charcoal for sure.
And willow or compressed, Megan. There's always a few options out there.
Yeah, both. You need to be comfortable with both of them, preferably. And yeah, so
I've another few questions, guys. So both Mags, Griffin, and an anonymous, do I have a special brush I use for ink painting? So one of my favorite brushes, I would say, let me see if I have it on hand here. I don't actually, as it so happens, is a Chinese calligraphy brush. So I have a few that are kind of similar. This is a much bigger version of a Chinese ink brush. They're pretty cheap. You can get them in Cork Art Supply. So if anyone wins a voucher, maybe you'll be inspired by the ink here. The Chinese ink brushes I really love because much like when we were talking about varying the pressure of line you use, Megan was talking about whether it's a spray paint can or whether it's a pencil, how thick or thin you make a line is read differently by people. And the wonderful thing about these type of brushes, you can't quite see it because it's dry right now, is essentially it allows for a much thicker mark up top here because there's a lot of bristles, whereas when it is wetted, it tapers down into a very fine point. So you might have seen at that very start of that video, if you're very careful with your pressure, you can get a needle thin line as well as a much thicker line. And for me, I really love that because you can be very bold with it or you can be controlled. But that said, I only have one of those in very recent years. I love ink, but I think a watercolor brush in general is nice just because watercolor brushes are a bit more flexible. There's a bit more bounce to them compared to, say, an acrylic brush, which is, harder and more stable. But that said, I think each to their own. It's just about experimenting. So one or two more questions. Maria Cray, any advice for drawing clothing on the human body
No.
when you don't have access to models?
Oh, I was just replying to Siobhan Quinlan there, who just made a lovely comment about how drawing really was very beneficial and valuable for her. Thanks for that, Siobhan. Yeah, drawing with clothes, especially as a beginner, is probably easier than drawing a figure without clothes on. And so I'm all for that. So if you are drawing figures that have clothes on, try and make them tight fitting rather than big clothes that are just flopping everywhere. If you can, to make them a bit more figure hugging, that's one choice. But also it's really a good idea to try and make someone, if they're gonna sit and wear clothes for you, is to have tops that kind of come down to the groin. So, to have a top that comes down to the end of your torso here at your groin. And so rather than wearing lots of layers and complicated stuff, try and keep it simple. So if you're wearing a t-shirt that was just around the neck and came down to your groin like that, that's a good idea. And then wearing other. However, if it is that you can't control what someone who very kindly is going to model for you or sit for you, let's say at the very least, again, the trick is to look at the clothing and the shape of the clothing rather than the figure. So I know it seems strange, but that's what we actually do, okay? We look for shapes, and your brain will be trying to draw the figure and ignore the clothes and try and get the figure there, but try and override that and look at the shapes. I hope that was
No, that sounds great, Megan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mags, I realized in terms of, just to finish off the ink questions, I tend to work either or, the wet or the dry paper. So we will be sending out the recording of this session, I believe, tomorrow, so you can have a look at those videos. But essentially, when the paper is wet and you touch it with ink, the ink will disperse and have a mind of its own. When the paper is dry, that ink, more or less, especially if you're working on a flat surface, will stay where you put it. It won't have quite a mind of its own. So thanks for that. And seeing some lovely questions, guys. Loved nude life drawing in college. Really enjoyed it. Is it better? We have an interesting question here about an easel versus, okay, is it better to draw on an easel sitting or standing? I've just finished first year. I would say, Megan, do you have an opinion for that? I would just say, if it's a long life drawing study that you're doing, choose the viewpoint that you're going to stay in. So if you're going to start out the day drawing up top, you're standing nice and still, and after 4 hours you are slouching and you're leaning on, the seat. Of course, your viewpoint of whatever model you're looking at will change a little bit. I don't know if you've much else on that. I think standing is better personally, but that said, I know people who, physically can't. So, I think finding something that is comfortable, as long as you are able to move comfortably, your arms are free, your view isn't impacted, unless you have any other opinions, Meg.
No, I think that's a good start, Holly. And I'm just looking at Orla O'Byrne's. Hi, guys. This is absolutely brilliant. My question: during lockdown, I started trying to teach my whole family 3 generations some drawing. My students can get frustrated with their drawings. They're not happy with their results. Any top tips on how to inspire and keep them drawing despite the results? Well, Ola, I'd say no better woman to as well. You're a brilliant drawer too. And top tips. Well, one thing can be the mediums, and sometimes we might be bored with our medium. And I certainly found for beginners, if you provide it all and have a choice there. So whether you've got colors there and chalks there and wet medium as well as dry medium. So maybe if the wet or the dry isn't exciting enough, then maybe do get the inks out and invest in some brushes and some nibs, and across it, because that's a lovely idea. And I think the other thing as well is that when we draw, we're drawing from observation or from memory or from imagination. So maybe there might be some in your crew, Ola, who are actually more excited at drawing memories, drawing from memory, and or drawing from imagination rather than observation. So and also I can find that sometimes it's a scale thing, and if you make the scale real small, postcard size or even smaller, that can be exciting. And also remember, another lovely tip for drawers, and we do this with our students regularly, is, if you concertina your paper. So, because sometimes that can be kind of exciting when you see one drawing beside another drawing. So, if you concertina it, so you fold it in half, guys, and then you just make it into thirds, say, and I'm just doing this seriously roughly, but you can work it out. It's a visual thing. So you've got a concertina. So sometimes, and just going around and drawing on this side and then drawing something else there, or maybe across the two of them. Sometimes when you start to open it up, it can be exciting, and the drawings can maybe take on a different meaning than they did before. So Ola, I hope there was something in that. A few tips. And any more?
Yeah, I'm looking through a few more. There's a good few, so thank you all for your interest. We'll try and get through
everybody. I'd love to answer everybody.
Well, in terms of where can you go life drawing, I suppose here we are, we can plug here at the Crawford College of Art and Design. We offer evening classes, so I teach intermediate and advanced life drawing. And Eileen Healy also teaches painting from life class during the evenings. So
portfolio course as well, Holly, for students wanting to get portfolios together. And at the moment, I'm not aware actually of any regular life drawing sessions that going on in the city, but they wouldn't be taught sessions. Usually they're just open sessions. So you come and maybe whoever's organized it will set a pose, and but they wouldn't be teaching. And I think the fact that we have life drawing at the Crawford on our BA honors degree courses is very unique too. A lot of life rooms, remember guys, got turned over to computer rooms in the UK, in America, in Europe. And so we were very lucky. We had management support to keep on our life room, and it's been revitalized. The big colleges in London now are like, oh my God, where's the life room gone? We've got to do it. So the thing is, trying to find someone who can teach in it is another issue. But so if you are looking, anybody's looking for BA courses across in Ireland, check out and see, because to my knowledge, I'm not sure if there's even open life rooms in other colleges, but I'm not aware of it being, you can study and be in the life room in first year, second year, and third year at the Crawford.
And yeah, I suppose to tack on, in normal times, we do host kind of life drawing marathons at the Crawford during the summer, where it is a week where you're free to drop in. You can kind of book a day. That, as we're used to hearing these days, things are still up in the air when it comes to planning in situ things. So I guess I would say, keep an eye out. You know, hopefully with pandemic things going well, we might be able to open it up so that we can, you know, have a few more drawing chats in real life like this, as well as getting, you know, some information.
Can we just, there's just a couple of Claire O'Mahony and an anonymous attendee. Do you think art is a gift? Or in the words of Picasso, every child is an artist. The problem is staying an artist when you grow up. In your opinion, why do you think that is? Well, you know, I mean, Jung said that you know, playing and being playful, and playing was the art of everything. And there's many artists who sort of say, I'm sure it was Picasso in another way around, he said it, that he spent the rest of his life trying to get back to being a child. And as I understand it, it's because the impact of societies and values, and all the time we're being bombarded by imagery, and you must do this and you mustn't do that, and you have to like this and you have to do that. There's all that. And so that that idea of getting to a child and getting back to the innocence is an idea of getting back before we took on the role of someone saying that isn't any good, that's no good, and you can't draw like that, and that's a terrible drawing if we're just thinking about drawing. And so, yeah, as I said, all those boundaries have been overlapped and reinvented, and they're kind of shifting. So certainly I agree that there is something very childlike, and that, I mean, it's because it's before all those preconceptions of you must, you have to, you have to. And I think what was that other one? It was just that art is, do you think art is a gift? I think being able to channel your creativity, and in so many different ways, whether you're actually washing up or you're actually using processes like drawing or ceramic, whether you're making baskets. I think this idea of a gift, I think it's open to everybody, don't you? It's a creativity, is we can all channel it, and it's finding in your life what excites you and where you want to channel it, and to think you can only do it like that, and only these subjects are valuable in society is, I think there are illusions there, aren't there? So, yeah, well, I mean, certainly I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be putting
that, guys, you know, there's so much, this is such a broad topic, you know, even just drawing on it, so never mind creativity, but certainly I think both me and Megan are in mind, you know, give yourself permission to be interested, intrigued, curious. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. You know, sometimes we are our worst critics, like I was saying, you know, and I think just have fun with it. You know, have experiments. Sometimes things go awry, but you will learn as much from the things that go wrong as the ones that sometimes are repeating the exact same experiment 20 times. You'll know the result. So, you know, finding little ways of disrupting your day to day, you know, whether like that blind drawing was a nice example of we're disrupting, we're not being our critics, even if, of course, afterwards all of us look at the drawing, it doesn't look exactly like how I wanted. It doesn't have to be as extreme as that, but finding a way to be curious and not know what the result will be, I think.
Yeah. And Paulina, you asked a question there. Any advice on finding time to draw in a full-time job? Well, just as Holly was saying, you know, when you let go of that, it has to look like this and it has to be like that. Just allowing yourself to be making marks, Paulina, and the marks don't actually have to represent anything. But I find what's really handy is making sure that you have things available, so that it might be where you're seated watching telly in the evening or relaxing, that there's always a little book and a pencil or a biro or something in arm's reach, you know, that you can always reach. And if you're at work, there might always be just a small pad of paper and something that you can just do a bit of blind drawing like we were suggesting, or just allowing yourself to try and even doodling is all accepted as well, but allowing yourself to make marks. And maybe you can make marks out of boredom or frustration, or make marks because you've got no time left.
Totally. In between a Zoom session, you're waiting for someone to join, you get the pencil, you scribble out
yeah,
that tension. Yeah, I think it's
totally.
great.
I mean, yes, it's like, it's do a quick drawing or meditate. So it isn't easy, Paulina, I get it, but making it easy for yourself, because you have the materials beside your bed, where you relax, at work. And
so we take one or two
so
more.
thank you, Meg.
We'll wrap up. So
yeah. Oh, great. Ada Lynch. It was wrong to smudge hairs on my drown. Hi, Ada. Hi, Rosalind. Hi, Ada. Thank you. Great. And thanks, Claire. And
it's no
thank
harm
you,
to smudge things with your hand if you want. Again, this is kind of, we're in the 21st century. If it's your intent to, and you think you can justify you're getting the results you want, I think go for it. You know, always try to do other things. Buy one of those smudge stick rolled up pencil or papery things. You know, use cloth, or maybe don't. You know, try cross hatching, try squiggling. If you know, if we're talking about making up tonal things, you know, just being aware of you have those options. That, you know, I think we can't really prescribe, don't do this. Perhaps if we went off to a Russian academy or somewhere in Rome where they're still trying to play like they're in the 18th century, of course you will have someone, don't you dare sharpen a pencil like that, or don't you dare smudge something. But the reality is, at least in our own culture of drawing these days, it's that permission. You are the master. Okay, you can choose to be realistic or you can choose to be abstract, as long as you are earnest in it. You know, it isn't just to placate something. There is real intrigue and there is real interest. I think, you know, go for it.
Okay. Guys, someone told me I was ruining a drawing by leaving oils from hand on the paper.
I get that. Okay. Again, sorry, Megan, if you want to answer that. Again, that's probably the more traditional ways of saying it. You know, if let's say you are trying to do one of those beautifully refined academic cast drawings, you go to the Crawford and you have this idea of, you know, something like that. Certainly, you will be told off, you know, make sure you wash your hands beforehand or the oil will ruin. But I'm a big believer in using what's on hand. So
it's all about the context, Ada. So, you know, hey, some contexts don't want no oil on the paper, you know, don't want no smudging. And that's it's just as much as the context allows you to choose the process you want to use. So the context might not require me to do a 5-hour academic drawing of that figure seated over there or of that landscape over there. The context might just need me to, from my head, imagine the figure on the chair or imagine a landscape. So it's again about the context will also say whether I'm going to draw on the side of the building or in the sky with a big, with whatever smoke thing, or whether I'm going to draw on my arm or whether I'm going to draw on a paper. So drawing is it's like all over the place now. It's everywhere, drawing, but there's a context and there's situations. So we make choices. So there's intention behind our drawing decisions. What's exciting is that we have so many decisions, you know, so many choices that we can choose. So everybody, thank you so much for the comments of thanking us as well. It's a bit of a juggle here, and I'm not sure when we're going to get cut off here either. I wanted to just say thank you. I was managed to just script thank you back to a few of you, but really thank you very much for the comments of appreciation that that some of you have put up. And did you slide through? Were there any other pressing questions there?
I think we covered most of them, Megan. Sorry, I'm just seeing my mic is going a bit. No,
Yeah.
I think we've covered most of them. So again, much like Megan says, thank you all for who stayed put, who are, we're gone a bit over time, but we both really, it's great to see so much interest in drawing, and hopefully we have inspired you guys. The weather is getting a bit nicer, we're getting a bit more energy, so have that curiosity, treat yourself to a sketchbook or something like that, and make your mark on the world.
Yes. Hang on, may I just, what do you think of leaving cert art life drawing formally removed from paper? Well, yeah. Yeah. Just that's the answer. I'm vaguely speechless, and it was unfortunate, and it was about giving with one hand and taking with the other. And yeah, I won't say too much more, but I wouldn't have made that choice if I'd had the decision. Would you, Holly? No way, because I thought it was a phenomenal that Leaving Cert students would get a chance to draw from a figure. I just thought it was amazing that you had that on the exam, and very disappointing that but there were some things they brought in which were not there before, so yeah. It's yes, so it is unfortunate. And however, I'm sure I think on the portfolio courses that the Crawford do, there would be a life drawing slot in there, and sure, we provide it at the college. So thanks for that question. And is that good? And thank you so much, everybody. Yeah. Oh, so it's very nice. Thank you. I've just noticed, B, that you've been doing some live drawing of Holly and I as we were here on the screen. Fantastic. And thank you for that. I'm not sure if I'll see what happens if I'm not sure if it'll come up. Yeah, we might just, oops, thank you. Great. Oh, well done. Okay. Thank you. Excellent. Cheers. And thanks, B. Great. So I presume everybody can get in on that. That was excellent. Thank you. Great. Okay. And yay. Thank you so much. That was so good. Such a good idea. Well done. Okay, thank you. And just going to push that down there. So anything else just pressing there before we go? Because can you get the qualifications to teach art in Crawford? Well, I'm not sure if you're suggesting the Crawford College or at the Crawford Gallery, because I know they do. They have a education outreach program there as well. It's all about an education in MA now. Okay, so the qualifications usually require that. Okay, and yeah, so get your BA and your MA. And that's the usual route. There's always other routes, wherever in other places, but that's what would be normal now. There, thank you. Oh, thank you, Philip. Philip's put that up. Philip's on the tech today. Thank you, Philip. Great. Yay. Cheers. Okay. And okay, thank you. All right. And Catherine O'Neill, thank you for joining us as well tonight too. Thank you. That's lovely. Did we do, should I worry about how I'm holding the pencil? There are tutorials, Anna. Should I worry about how I am holding the pencil? There are tutorials out there that require a way of holding the medium. Is that important? No, it's all about context again and what you want to do with it. I mean, there are very competent drawers, painters who use their mouth to hold their pencil or their foot to hold their pencil. So starting to say you must only hold it like this or like that, it just doesn't make sense to me, because it doesn't. So there is usually some sort of idea, the way that when somebody says, oh, you must do it like this, or you could do it like this, or you must do it like this, and there might be a benefit to it that they certainly have found, and they want to share that. If I suggest ways of holding things, I say this is the way that suits a lot of people, but I'm always aware, and because maybe I've seen so many students, I'm always aware that there's lots of ways of doing the same thing, and I would never dream of saying sometimes someone might be holding something which is it's not enabling them to use the medium in a particular way. So they're only ending up using it. If I was holding my pencil like this, I might miss out on being able to get other types of marks from my pencil. And then I might interact and sort of say, have you thought about doing it like this or that? But some people might say, no, I can't. I'm not able to. So you need to sort of work with that and say, okay. So I think in the current day's climate, setting down rules again is especially when you're in the educational area, it's not relevant. And yeah, did I answer that enough? It's just, yes. And it's not that people are right or wrong either. It's just that people have different ways of doing things. And it's yeah. I think because I've been on this side, I've been allowed to experience a lot and see what the choices are. So I can make that kind of informed reply to you there. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. And I think I think that's it. Thank you so much for staying on, those of you that are still here. Drawing on the bus on the commute to work. Great. Hi, Aoife. Aoife, well done. Thanks for joining us, Aoife. Keep that drawing. You see, there's any time, any place. Crawford students don't stop. Well done. That is great. Okay. So, oh no, look, there's more questions. Is that more? Just okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mags. Thanks a million. Thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you, Mary. Okay, great. Thank you. See you next time. Wow. I think we need a YouTube channel for the next time, Holly.
Yeah, there we go, Meg.
Okay. Guys, we love drawing. We love talking about drawing, and it was great of you all to join us. And thank you very much to Mervyn and Phil for tonight, and in particular Mervyn, who's organizing the whole MTU Succeeding Together series. I think actually this is the last one, Holly, not even the penultimate. I think this was the bookend. So great that we went out and on a drawing note, I think if you can call it that. Okay.
Around Cork and wherever else people have tuned in from. So definitely best of luck with everyone. You know, it's really lovely to hear that you guys are interested in some of our ramblings. So, you know, definitely get excited, get interested, and, you know, allow yourself to be curious again is kind of my main ethos. You know, have a look around. Have a look around. That's, you know, enjoyable. Enjoy it, even if you don't have a pencil in hand. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and thank you, Megan, as always.
Oh, thank you too, Holly. And thanks, Sarah. That last comment, you were inspired. That really is, that's great as well. That's a good note to finish off on the chat as well. Thanks, Sarah. But thank you, Holly, too. And yeah, we're over and